friends. How's it going? My name's Popeye. We got some more Umineko question arc chapter 2, which we actually learned last time. The question arc is just something that they threw in for the English people because that's what they were calling it anyways. Before we get into it too much, this game has some trigger warnings that I just want to make sure everyone's aware of. This game has themes including but not limited to death, murder, mutilation, torture, child abuse, any of the above against a minor. Hello Samus, how's it going tonight? Hopefully your Friday is doing well. Last time we shifted from kind of the George and Shannon's relationship to it started with Shannon and Beatrice, and we find out that they hang out regularly. It seems like Shannon is maybe the only friend that Beatrice actually has, as only Shannon and Cannon can see her, and Cannon doesn't really care much for her, as I'm sure we'll see in just a second here. Oh no, today sucks? I'm sorry to hear that. Well, hopefully the evening is better than today has been. And we also learned a bit more about Jessica, that she's, all of her friends have boyfriends, and she's been lying and saying that she has one, that she'll bring them to the school culture fest where she's putting on a musical performance. Of course, she doesn't find anyone, so Shannon suggests that Cannon go and pretend to be her boyfriend, which he does. But after all is said and done, and Jessica essentially declares her feelings for Cannon, Cannon rejects her with the same message that he keeps saying, which is, I am furniture, like, I am not worthy or capable of being loved. You can love me, but I am not able to reciprocate that. And then Cannon witnesses Spider Kinzo outside of the mansion, which was a very rare occasion, lamenting, of course, why Beatrice doesn't show up, but Cannon can see that Beatrice is actually there, and, like, physically touching Kinzo, but Kinzo cannot see, feel, or has no knowledge that Beatrice is there, because as Beatrice explained, he has no magic power. He has the least amount of magic power humanly possible, and the only time she appeared was on a whim because she was bored, and he had summoned her. Even though he had summoned her incorrectly and didn't have the magical power to do so, she appeared on a whim. So yeah, Beatrice and Cannon are just about to get into a conversation. I think this is right after Cannon rejects Jessica, I believe. In theory, from what she said, it sounds like she could appear again if she wanted to. However, there's possibly some restrictions on her magical powers, as evidenced by the discussion she has with Shannon, where Shannon has to break the mirror that's causing her some issues using her power. So it's definitely possible that there's other things that are there that are stopping her from using her power. And how am I doing? I'm doing pretty good. I'm glad that it's not 1,000,000 degrees. And we're supposed to get rain overnight, which will, I think, be nice for the heat and humidity. So fingers crossed it starts looking better. Today started out nice, and then when I was just outside like 2 hours ago, I think it hit like 27 or 28 degrees, so it's still a bit hot. Alright, but with that, we're going to dive into how Beatrice is going to make fun of Cannon. He turned around, and the witch was suddenly there. It looked like she'd been there the whole time enjoying their performance, as if it were a play.
愉快なる見せ物に免じて特別に許す。男と女のこじれ合いに勝る見せ物は1000年を経ても存在せぬな。わらわにとっては何よりも甘美な止められぬ快楽よ。
Canon pulled a butterfly brooch out of his pocket. This was the one that Shannon gave him. That was the manifestation of Beatrice's power that helped her and George come together. It was the crystallization of the great magic that the witch had bestowed. Without hesitation, Canon flung it hard into the ground and stomped on it.
ほう、わらわの与えたものと知りつつ、それは何を意味するのか。
今、理解した。お前がしているのは恋のキューピッドなんて洒落たものじゃない。お前は、結ばれぬ者たちに恋を見せてる。
そう思うも自由よ。わらわが力を貸した人間の多くは、お前と同じようなことを口にする。
ほうけるな！お前は、シャノンを憐れんで力を貸したんじゃない。恋に胸を焦がすシャノンの心の隙をついて、自分を封じていた鏡を割らせた。しかもそれだけじゃない。その末路まで想像がついていて、もてあそんでいる。
She does know how it's gonna end, with her killing
違う
everyone.
か！
カグとはつくづく哀れな存在よ。夢も未来も恋すらもないか。よいよい、身の程はわきまえるに限るぞ。ジェシカの心にはお前が察する通り淡い恋心があった。そなたはそれにハサミを入れ刈り取ったつもりでいる。だが木は勝手に茂らせたものより枝を間引き剪定したものの方が太い枝をつけるというぞ。家具に恋する娘か。面白いぞ、実に面白い。シャーノンとジョージもやがては結ばれ得ぬ恋に行き詰まり、わらわ好みの大きな果実を実らせるだろう。しかしいかんせんあの二人はうまくいきすぎていて面白くなくてな。そこへ行くとお前たちは大いにわらわを楽しませてくれそうだぞ。
The witch laughed. Even though she had known that the two could not be joined, she had lent magic to join them together. However, they could not escape the fate that made it impossible for them to be joined. The witch knew that. Even if they were joined, the relationships of Shannon and George, Ken and Jessica, would fail for certain. And they wandered through the eternal desert, in the hell of love. They would be tormented by eternal thirst.
わらわがその力を対価なく貸すことがあるとでも恋に手は貸そう。その対価はやがて必ず訪れる二人への過酷な運命の鑑賞料としていただくわけよ。これに勝る見せ物は1000年経っても存在せぬ。金蔵を見るがいい。恋の味を知り楽園を追放された哀れな老いぼれの末路を、死んでも死にきれぬさながら亡者のような生き様を見るがいい。
やはりお前は魔女だ。消えて失せろ、この悪魔め。
頼まれずとも消えよう。まだまだわらわには力が戻らぬでな。姿を現し続けるのはまだまだ疲れることよ。そなたら恋人たちに力を授けるのに無理をしすぎたのでな。触媒のブローチなしで力を維持し続けるのは今のわらわには容易ではない。
Ken ground his foot even more into the stomped brooch, felt it break under his foot. Then it dissolved as if into water, and changed into butterflies that sparkled gold, which fluttered away from beneath Cannon's foot.
わらわもこの姿を保ち続けるのがしばしそなたの願い通り姿を消そう。満ちぬ潮も月もないように我が魔力も必ず満ちる。そして必ずや訪れよう。わらわがよみがえるにふさわしい時が。それが明日のことか来年のことか、さもなくば100年1000年未来のことかは想像もつかぬ。 だがわらわを楽しませてくれる者たちがおる限り、わらわは必ずや力を得てよみがえるであろう。その時までしばし姿を消す。そなたの手のひらにもはやあざはなく、そなたが望むならば、
She's referring to the bruise that she gave Canon and Shannon in the shape of a butterfly when they first met her. I'm not sure how long ago that was, but that was before Shannon and George were in a relationship.
忘れ去られることほどわらわに悲しいことはない。だがわらわは必ずよみがえる。そしてその日がいつ訪れても後悔することのないよう、わらわは必ずや再臨し、この島の真の主として全て、その時こそ再び黄金鏡の扉が開かれる。欲深な亡者たちが必ずやわらわを呼び覚ます。
くどい、早く消え去れ黄金の魔女。
Leaving behind a mocking laugh, the witch turned into a flight of gold butterflies and scattered away. The whole area sparkled like a gold blizzard in a snow globe. It was a fleeting, fantastical scene that disappeared in a heartbeat. The witch could no longer be seen. However, Canon felt like he could still hear that shrill, unpleasant laugh. The song is called Scorpion Guts, and that's pretty metal.
なぜに久しぶりの人の世はこうも愉快なのか。恋に惑え、黄金に惑え、そのどちらにも惑わぬものなど人間にあらず。なるほど、故に家具とは言えたり。家具は人間に奉仕するために生み出される。そしてわらわは退屈なる千年の慰み者として人間を虐げる。そのわらわが家具を支配できぬとは、なんとも愉快な三すくみ。金蔵め、実に面白いことをしてくれる。家具め、わらわを撃てるか試みてみるがいい。今宵まきたる恋の種は2つ。すでにまきたる種と含めてこれで3つ。
Okay, hold on. She's saying there's 3 seeds of love. So the obvious ones, we have Canon and Jessica, even though that's one way. We have Shannon and George. Who's the third one? Oh, is it Kinzo and Beatrice, maybe? Again, one way. And then, oh, okay, and then okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I see you came to the same conclusion I did. As if to illustrate that point. Considering this guy only met Beatrice once, for what probably wasn't more than like 5 or 10 minutes, one time, I don't know, like 30 years ago, he has a great memory to be able to describe to an artist how to make that portrait.
これほどまでに恋焦がれているのに答えようとせぬお前を永遠に憎む。
親方様、それ以上のお酒はお体に障ります。南條先生からもご注意を受けておられるのでは。
黙れ源氏、お前には分からぬ。我が嘆きも苦しみも分からぬ。お前だけは我が苦しみを理解してくれていると、お前だけは我が最古の友人であると信じているのに、なぜに理解できないというのか。おお、ベアトリーチェ、 なぜ私だけを置き去りに。
Why did you leave me alone? And Genji's like, oh, I'm here. So 2 of the 3 couples are in tears. What's gonna happen with George and Shannon?
なんだよ家具ってわけわかんねえよ
I also assume that we will
おいたわしやジェシカ
at some
様
point learn Cannon's original name.
寝室から聞こえてくるすすり泣く声にすべては若すぎた二人と近すぎた距離、そして生まれた家柄が遠すぎたゆえの悲劇。私はただただお嬢様のお気持ちを汲み取り、足音を殺して静かに立ち去るのみなのでございます。
Thanks, person from a Shakespearean tragedy who just like recaps everything and then walks away silently.
それって
Looks like Shannon and George are on another date.
どういう意味ですか、ジョージさん。
言葉通りの意味だよ。僕はまだ自分の城を築き上げてない。それができて初めて僕は一人前になれたと思えるんだ。その時君と結婚したい。
それは
でもそれじゃあもう僕の心が許せないんだ。だから君に婚約指輪を贈りたい。
婚約ですか。でも私家具ですし。
そうだったね。じゃあ家具は人の言うことを聞かないとね。今君に贈るのにふさわしい指輪を作らせてる。多分今度の親族会議の日には持っていけると思う。
So Shannon knew that he was going to propose
その時に送
shortly.
るから、どうか君の返事を聞かせてほしいんだ。君が僕の婚約を受けてくれたら、僕はその席でおじい様を含めた全ての親族の前で君との婚約を宣言する。
Okay, so the next morning, when Shannon, at least in the last timeline, dies, George, when he saw her, I guess like in the morning at breakfast or whenever they would first see, he would have seen her answer and would have announced it to everyone there, probably at the table.
ジョージさん。
君と僕の仲をふさわしくないと咎める人たちはきっといる。
Also, I just noticed something. His eyes kind of match her hair, and her eyes kind of match his hair. Not sure if that's on purpose.
でもそいつらの顔を見る必要はない。君はその瞳の中に僕だけを満たしていればいいから。君を必ず幸せにする。それだけは絶対に約束するから。
どのように実るのか楽しみでならない。憂に過ぎて腐り落ちる果
Chanting
実
in
の
the background
駅に
sounds like
黄
it's
金の蝶たちは
either
舞い
Latin
降
or
り
Italian. And of course, it's now stopped. And now it sounds like mice.
今より収穫の日が待ち遠しい。宴の時はまだかまだか。
I think we might be jumping forward to the actual family conference now. Yeah, okay. Come on, for not repeating too much. They'd eaten breakfast at a coffee shop in the station building. By chance, the inside of the shop had been decorated with Halloween colors since it was October. It seemed that Maria had really taken a liking to that. Ever since, she'd been making a fuss inside the train about wanting to have a Halloween festival without caring that she was attracting the attention of others. Halloween is popular in Europe and America, but people are hardly familiar with it all in Japan. The shopping district was colorfully decorated with orange pumpkins, but the costume parades of children demanding sweets and saying trick-or-treat were nowhere in sight. Hope everyone was ready for Maria again.
親族会議は遊びじゃないのよ。おじいさまにお会いするんだから、ちゃんとしたお洋服じゃないとダメ。
While it wasn't completely full inside the train, there were enough people here that almost all of the seats were occupied. Among them, Maria was making a fuss, kicking her feet back and forth in her seat, while Rosa scowled at her. Rosa had told her many times in low voice to stop, but Maria was taking no notice whatsoever. Once Maria gets this way, no matter how much you try to explain the situation or calm her, she doesn't listen. In the past, Rosa used to pamper Maria and give in to her at times like this. But that had probably been the problem. Almost certainly, the young Maria had formed the wrong impression that if she kept complaining noisily, her mother would give in and listen to her. That error had been brought to Rosa's attention through an educational book, and since then she had hardened her heart was not to pamper her beloved daughter. But Rosa could manage less and less mutual understanding with Maria, and it had become more and more common that she felt discouraged by her own powerlessness. Trick-or-treat sounds much longer in Japanese.
あなたにあげるお菓子はありません。さっき朝ごはんを食べたでしょ。お菓子をくれなきゃいたずらしちゃう。お菓子をくれなきゃいたずらしちゃう。
As Maria kicked her feet, a stout old woman sitting in the seat across from Maria picked a candy out of her handbag and gave it to her. Maria sounds like the kid I would least want sitting behind me on an airplane.
Happy Halloween! こらマリア、勝手に人からお菓子をもらっちゃダメでしょ。返しなさい。
いいんですよ。
It's alright, it's not poisoned, I promise.
元気なお嬢さんですこと。おいくつです？
There may not have been any malice in those words from the old woman. It seemed that Rosa had taken that in an extremely humiliating way.
マリア、知らない人からお菓子をもらっちゃいけないっていつも言ってるでしょ。おお、これはマリアがもらったの。やだ、マリアの。話しなさい。ママの言うことを聞けっていつも言ってるでしょ。マリアの。その言うのをやめなさいって言ってるでしょ。
Just reminding everyone of the trigger warnings. Rosa is definitely not a good or kind person, especially towards Maria. Yes, thank you for that announcement. Rosa reflexively hit Maria violently on her cheek. In a flash, Maria started crying loudly. Rosa immediately snatched the candy from Maria's hand and stuck it out towards the dumbfounded old woman sitting next to them.
うちの子に勝手にお菓子を与えないでください。
ごめんなさい。
Breathing heavily, Rosa once again held the candy out to the old woman. The woman looked confused for a moment about what she should say, but then understood that perhaps her actions might have caused trouble for this parent and child, and she accepted the candy back, apologizing. Then Rosa finally took notice of her surroundings. Her daughter's clothes were all messed up, and she was crying and shouting with her nose dripping. There were many dumbfounded passengers watching them. Except for the sound of the train humming, the railcar was completely silent. Fortunately, that pitiful silence didn't last more than a short while. However, in its place came an even more painful atmosphere as everyone whispered. Maria shouted, cried, kicked, and stomped her feet as usual, paying no heed to the people sitting around her. Impulsively, Rosa tried to slap her again, but she noticed the cold eyes of the people on the train and couldn't do that anymore. When the train stopped, Rosa got off, forcibly pulling Maria by the arm and almost dragging her along the ground. As usual, Maria didn't stop crying. Rosa took her to the end of the platform and hit her cheek again. At the moment she was hit, Maria stopped crying for an instant, but before long, she shouted and cried even more than before. Rosa, whose emotions had exploded, grabbed Maria by her collar and pulled her hair as if to rip it out. Jeez. Along with those severe words, Rosa hit Maria's head over and over again. The more Maria cried and shouted, the more Rosa hit her. The more Maria was hit, the more intensely she cried and shouted. The one who timidly called to her was the station attendant. Rosa glared at him with a look that said, "Don't cut into the problems of a mother and child, stranger." The station attendant surely hadn't wanted to talk to her. However, Rosa had been yelling on the platform for a much longer time than she'd imagined. Her emotional scolding had caused the passengers on the platform to advise the station attendant that it would be a good idea to speak to her. Rosa yelled at the station attendant that they would get on the next train and not to bother them anymore. And then, finally, or should we say, for the second time, she noticed the passengers on the platform staring at her from the distance. Rosa sweated slightly. She felt the wind chill, the sweat tormenting her. Maria was still crying, shielding her own head. No, unless this beating stopped, she would probably keep crying forever. As Rosa recovered from the evil heat inside her head, she knew she had surrendered her soul to something bad again. Rosa fell to her knees and hugged Maria, whose face was all sogged with tears and mucus. Finally, Maria realized that her mother had turned back to being her mother. Then she clung to her mother's body and cried, burying her face in her mother's chest.
悪いママを許して、悪いママを許して、本当にごめんなさい。ママをどうか嫌いにならないで。
マリアは全然平気。ママを嫌いになんかならない。ママはまた悪い魔女に乗り移られていただけ。でもママが帰ってきたから平気。
悪い魔女にママはまた乗り移られていたの。ごめんね。本当にごめんね。
For a long time, the two of them hugged each other, asking for forgiveness and sending words of forgiveness back. After a while, the two of them gradually calmed down and naturally drew their faces apart. Maria's face, Rosa's face, both were deep red after crying their eyes out.
マリアはハロウィンのお祭りがしたいの？
ジョージお兄ちゃんやジェシカお姉ちゃんにかぼちゃマシュマロを見せてあげたかった。
That was a sweet which had been alongside the cash register at the shop where they'd eaten breakfast. It was a fancy sweet that had a big orange marshmallow in the shape of a jack-o'-lantern stuck on the end of a stick. Marie had wanted that and had insistently pestered for it. Rosa had disallowed it, saying there's no way she would buy such a sweet right after they'd had breakfast.
じゃあマリア、この町に売っているかどうかわからないけど、降りて探してみようか。
ママ大好き。愛してる。ありがとう。
私もよ、マリア。愛してるわ。
The truth was that they had no time to waste loitering around at a stopover station. If they missed the airplane, they would fall half a day behind schedule. They should have left home with more time to spare, but she ended up leaving late after spending too long choosing Maria's clothes. Because of that, Rosa had been a bit impatient since the morning. She looked at the clock. They should be getting on the next train immediately. But her daughter had firmly joined hands with her to go buy the sweet together, and that hand was warm. To Rosa right now, it was more important to regrow her bonds with Maria. Maria was not only Rosa's beloved daughter, she was everything Rosa had. Fortunately, she could see that there was a big supermarket right in front of the station. Maybe she wouldn't be able to find a sweet exactly like that one, but Maria would probably accept something similar. Besides, Rosa also couldn't show up with a face swelled from crying. She'd have to fix her makeup.
あれと全く同じマシュマロは見つからないかもしれないけど、似たようなお菓子があるといいね。
I don't know if I'd call it bribing, but I think she's trying to, like, repair their relationship. There's a lot of things. First of all, this isn't how you would repair this relationship, because you are an adult and she is a child. Even if you both have things you need to work through, you are the adult here. But second of all, based on how they were talking, this has clearly happened multiple times. I mean, we've seen that Maria will do this in front of strangers, in front of family. Yeah, she's got issues she needs to work out that I doubt she will work out, because I don't think 1980s therapy in Japan was a very commonplace thing or looked well upon.
それで、いとこのみんなを一緒に驚かそうね。
Is it you hate all the adults? Team Beatrice? Beatrice did nothing wrong. The two left the turnstiles of the station in this unknown town. Maria walked across the pedestrian crossing together with her mother, feeling very pleased, as though she was walking in an amusement park. Yes. Yes, this is very true. Both faces were still deep red, but warmth could be seen between the two of them, mother and child, as they smiled at each other awkwardly. Luckily, I think it all works out for them, because isn't the plane delayed because of the weather?
あなた、こんなところでどうされたのですか？
君か。何でもない。考え事をするのにここが少し心地よかっただけだ。
今日の準備はすべて手配が終わっています。あとはお茶でも飲みながらくつろいで待とうではありませんか。
すまん。君にいつも面倒なことを全て押し付けている。
どうか私をもっと頼ってはいただけませんか。私はあなたの妻です。
無論君にはいつも助けられているし感謝もしている。だからこそ私は私の仕事に専念できる。
分かっています。お仕事のこと、そしてお父様の遺産の話ですね。
君には関係のないことだ。欲深な兄弟たちの腐肉のあさり合いに過ぎん。
大丈夫です。あなた、すべてうまくいきます。あなたのお仕事がうまくいかなかったことはありません。
Asui softly cuddled close to Krause's shoulder. He spoke words to reward Krause for the difficulties of his work, but Natsui was herself the one who knew best that it wasn't going well. Krause's enterprises were something like a seesaw, where large amounts of money swung. A big investment leads to a large return, but the swaying of a large-scale seesaw is large yet sluggish, and not something which shows immediate results. At times, he would make more investments so that the seesaw inclined faster towards the good side. Naturally, he did that because he had the confidence that, in a not-so-distant future, he would be able to recover all the investments made. However, the seesaws Krause chose never turned out as he would have liked them to. His foresight wasn't wrong, but times were slow. They never caught up with him. Sounds like a pyramid scheme. For example, think of a literal seesaw placed in a park. Due to its great popularity, there was always someone playing on it, so if he wanted to play, he'd have to wait a long time for his turn. And one day, he found a seesaw vacant, straddled it realizing he was the first to arrive, and had it all to himself. However, nobody got on the opposite side of the seesaw, so he couldn't play on it. No matter how much time passed, nobody came to the opposite side of the seesaw. The seesaw is a popular piece of playground equipment, so if you waited, another person would definitely show up. Krause noticed. The weather looked like it was getting worse, so I know he was coming outside to play. Was there like a recession at this point in time? Curious. Recession in Japan, 1980s. Looks like there was a little bit of fluctuation in the 80s, especially in the early 80s. Yeah, okay, so apparently there was like a stagnation of the economy in Japan in the 80s that led to an economic bubble bursting around 1990. So this actually lines up with that part of history. I think this is supposed to be like 88-ish, so this is just before the bubble bursts. Meaning things have probably been stagnant for 6 or 7 years. If he vacated his place because the weather seemed to be getting worse, someone would definitely snatch his place away. He would only end up longingly gazing from a distance at someone else having fun playing on the seesaw. On one side of the seesaw, he continued to wait patiently alone. It was Krause's current enterprise and situation.
私にもう少しの勇気と自分の先見性を信じる自信があれば、いつだって失敗はしなかった。
ええ、そうです。あなたの先見性はいつも間違っていません。
Sounds like he's having good ideas, but he's like ahead of the time where he's investing in something, but the product or the company or the service isn't quite ready to take off yet. But if he liquidates that company, if he goes declares bankruptcy for that company, then when it does come to fruition, when it is the right time, someone else is probably gonna pick it up.
あなただけが
He
お
should
父
invest
様
in
の才覚
Bitcoin.
を受け継いだのです。他の兄弟たちが誰も受け継がなかった天性のものを受け。
なのに私はそれを信じられず。
Yeah, but that's on par for him. He gets there too early.
なぜ自分を信じることができないのか。自分を信じられない男を誰が信じる。誰も信じない。私はいつも敗者の座るべき椅子に自ら座り、親父にもお袋にも兄弟たちにも笑われる。私はいつになったらこのコンプレックスから解放されるのだ。いつになったら。
Only Natsuhi knew. She knew of Krause's anguish. As the eldest son of the Ushiromiya family, who would have to shoulder a big responsibility, couldn't open his pained heart to anyone. Would always be compared to his father's great enterprises.
あなたが親族会議に専念できるよう、すべての手配を済ませています。すべて。
すまん。親父殿の件は問題ないかね。
はい。源氏と南條先生は私たちの味方です。あの強欲な兄弟たちを決してお父様には合わせません。
Okay, here is new information. From the very start, they had planned that grandfather would never come and see the family. So even though they're going to talk to grandfather and try to, convince him to come down, they're really not trying. It just, they're putting on a show.
ええ、お任せください。年に一度の大仕事に腕が鳴っております。
Ingredients of varied colors had been gathered in the kitchen, and the preliminary arrangements had already been started. Even though it was still morning, the ingredients for dinner were already in saucepans and steaming. Normally he had to deal with several assorted matters other than cooking, but on the day of the family conference he could devote himself to it entirely. I see a can of tomatoes, maybe a bag of flour directly above my head. It looks like a bag of something. Tagoda, who was originally a chef, this was surely the greatest gala occasion of the whole year.
ええ、ディナーには子牛のステーキを。素晴らしい肉がすでにホレイコで今夜を待ちわびておりますよ。まかないも今夜はぜひ期待してください。
It was rare for Tagoda to be in this good of a mood towards his fellow servants. Tagoda, who boasted about being a chef who worked exclusively for the Ushiromiya family, being given the right to show off his cooking at the family conference was the greatest honor.
わかった。任せるのでよろしく頼む。あと、熊沢がそちらにいないか。
熊沢さんですか。先ほど見かけましたが、こちらにはおりません。ゲストハウスの方へ準備に行かれたのではないでしょうか。
また油を売っているのか。いや、結構だ。では引き続きよろしく頼む。
ええ、万事この豪太にお任せを。
Genji placed the telephone back on the receiver, sighing lightly. Thinking of Kumasawa, who was no doubt hiding and slacking off even though things were this busy. And the ostentatious Goda, who only felt like doing anything on a day when he could show off, Genji sighed once again.
失礼します。ゲストハウスの各お部屋の準備が整いました。
お嬢様より、お子様方が泊まれるよう、4人分の用意をするようにとのご指示を賜りましたが。
今年は6年ぶりにバトラ様がお見えになるそうだ。お嬢様もいとこ4人で夜更かしをされたいのだろう。準備するように奥様にはお伝えしなくてよい。
そうですね。かしこまりました。
今夜は深夜勤で、そのまま明日は早朝勤か。しんどい2日間になりそうだな。
そういえば、台風が直撃するって天気予報で言っていますね。大丈夫でしょうか。
台風がよほどそれない限り、場合によっては親族の皆様方のお帰りの船に響くだろう。親族会議の日程が月曜か火曜あたりまで長引くかもしれない。長丁場になるだろうが、皆くれぐれも粗相のないように頼む。シャノンは焦らぬよう落ち着いて、カノンは愛想よくご挨拶をするように。
はい、注意します。
注意します。
大切なお客様がお越しになられる日だ。くれぐれも粗相がないように。
心得ています。いつだってここには大切なお客様しか訪れませんから。
カノン、今日は本当の意味で大切なお客様を迎える。心構えを改めるように。
はい。
シャノン、どうした？さっきから何かそわそわしているようだが。
いえ、なんでもありません。失礼いたしました。
姉さん、
She's probably just happy that George is coming back.
今日は大切なお客様がお越しになる日なんだよ。プライベートとは切り離すようにね。
プライベートなんか知りません。
Shannon blushed just a bit. She turned her gaze away from the clock. Was it about time for the airplane carrying the family to arrive at Nijima? She had thought she'd been hiding the fact that her long-awaited reunion with George was making her heart palpitate, but the canon who stood at her side understood her perfectly. She also knows he had promised to propose at this conference, or that he thought the ring would be ready for this conference. We don't know how long the time skip is. In terms of timeline, probably where all of this...
これを黙って受け取ってくれ。
Where all this sits is between the previous family gathering, which is, it's in October. It's October 4th is the current date and time. So between last October, George and Shannon started their relationship. The school had their culture festival, so at most this has been a year that all of this has been going on. My guess, however, is it's a much accelerated timeline than that. Maybe like 7 or 8 months. Inside a bathroom stall, George is practicing something over and over, taking out a small velvet box in his pocket like a quick-draw desert gunman.
違うな。
The time skip is when it's was just before we saw Maria and Rosa. When that scene started with them on the train, that was the time skip.
シャノンは牽引力のある
It
男性が好
specified
きな
that
んだ。
that was October 4th, but I don't know if we got a specific date for any of the events before this.
もっと馬力がある感じじゃないとダメだ。シャノン、これを薬指につけるんだ。命令だよ。
There was a black screen that gave a date that just said like current date October 4th, 1986 or whatever year it is.
ああ、左手とちゃんと言わないと右手にされちゃうかもしれない。いや、シャノンもそこまでかまととじゃないけど、ああ、でも少しは自由意志がないとなんだかその、
As he crossed his arm, moaning and groaning, someone knocked on the door. George was startled back to reality.
お、ジョージ君、大丈夫か？腹の調子でも悪いのか？
ルドルフおじさん、大丈夫です。平気です。ご心配は無用です。
そっか。ならいいんだけどな。無理して力みすぎるなよ。尻が切れちまうぜ。
Rudolph washed his hands, laughing cheerfully, and left. George knew that the most embarrassing part hadn't been overheard, and he patted his chest in relief.
キリエ、ローザはまだ来ないのか？
まだよ。遅いわね。
天候調整中だからいいようなものを、これで普段通りのダイヤだったらあいつ乗り遅れちまうぜ。そしたらどうする気なんだあいつ。
ローザさんだっていい年の大人よ。なんとかするわ。
I love how they say adult now, like she just became an adult when she has, I believe Maria is supposed to be 10. A 10-year-old child. I hope that means she's been an adult at least 11 years, otherwise we gotta call the FBI.
兄って人はいくつになっても妹を子供扱いなのね。
親父だっていくつになっても子供だけどな。
だと？俺が子供ならおめえは赤ん坊じゃねえか。ほれほれ、バトラちゃん、高い高い。
やめろ、くすぐってやめ。
親子ってより悪ガキ仲間って感じね。ほら、いらしたわよ。
おおおお、ローザさんやないか。マリアちゃん、久しぶりやの。
久しぶり。
マリア、お久しぶりです。でしょ？言ってごらん。
お久しぶりです。
そうや、よく言えた。ご褒美に飴玉あげような。あれ、どこにしまったんや。
ローザさん、お久しぶりです。マリアちゃんもお久しぶり。ご無沙汰してます、キリエ姉さん、秀吉兄さんと。あら、バトラ君、大きくなったわね。
いやー今日は会うたびに言われてて恥ずかしいっすよ。
おう、ローザ、遅かったな。飛行機がダイヤ通りだったらギリギリってとこだったぜ。
ごめんなさい、列車の接続がうまくいかなくて。何？また天候調査中なの？
ぼやかないぼやかない。船で6時間も揺られるくらいなら飛行機でほんの30分の方がずっとマシよ。たとえ1時間余計に待たされたって全然早いんだから。
あれがマリアなのか。大きくなったな。成長期か。
前に会ったのは6年前？それは変わるわよ。女は心変わりがあればたった1日でも生まれ変わる生き物よ。
Maria noticed a big man who she didn't remember mixed among the relatives and hid behind Rosa's back, glaring at Battler. So if she's 10 now, the last time they met, Maria would have been 4, so it makes sense that she doesn't remember Battler.
おい、バトラ、挨拶しろい。前にやったのが3歳の時じゃ。
Okay, there
初
we
対
go,
面
3.
同じだぞ。
3歳じゃ覚えてねえよな。よ、マリア、久しぶり。大きくなったな。
マリア、バトラお兄ちゃんよ。ルドルフおじさんの息子さん、わかる？
おじさんの息子さんが、おじさんが息子さん。
She was obviously on her guard. She must have found it frightening for a large guy like Battler to suddenly start speaking frankly to her. Battler noticed that as well and thought of various ways he might approach her. Then he noticed the sweet she had in her hand. It was the jack-o'-lantern sweet that Rosa had bought for her.
そっか、10月だからハロウィンか。お菓子をくれなきゃいたずらしちゃうぞ。
Try to take a treat away from a small child, normally to expect them to cry and start a fuss. The adults thought that method wasn't good, but surprisingly, Maria looked pleased, her face splitting into a wide grin.
ハロウィン、ハロウィン。ほらママ、バトラもハロウィン知ってる。ほらほら。
こーら、バトラお兄ちゃんと呼びなさい。ごめんね、バトラ君。
いやいや、気にしないっすよ。俺はバトラと呼んでくる。俺もマリアって呼ぶからな。ほらマリア、ハロウィンだぞ。お菓子をくれなきゃいたずらしちゃうぞ。
お お菓子をくれなきゃいたずらしちゃうぞ。
From inside her handbag, Maria picked out a jack-o'-lantern sweet identical to the one she had in her hand and presented it to Battler. And the Battler accepting it was enough to confirm their friendship. The adults felt admiration at how children have their own ways of communicating. We'll hold that thought. That might be a thing that happens soon. Maria had been complaining that she wanted to have a Halloween festival. It must have felt like Battler was a friend, since he knew about Trick or Treat. Her defensive posture from before was completely gone. Now she was all merry as though they'd been friends for decades.
そうだな。日本じゃハロウィンってマイナーなイベントだよな。仮装行列で練り歩くなんて。向こうのニュースではよく見るけど、日本じゃ見たことないぜ。
マリアも仮装したかった。仮装していとこみんなでお菓子をくれなきゃいたずらしちゃうぞって。
そっかそっか。今度俺と一緒にやろうな。
It's October 4th. You guys have like 4 weeks.
マリアだったら何の仮装をして練り歩きたい？
魔女ベアトリーチェ。
I hope it cuts to everyone here.
おや、お嬢様、こんなところに。奥様が探しておいででしたよ。
探されたくねえからこんなところにいるんだぜ。
You're in the foyer.
みなりは大丈夫かとか、言葉遣いをちゃんとするようにとか、お小言が言いたいだけに違いないぜ。
違いありません。
私はさ、なぜか親族会議の日になるとこの魔女様が気になるんだよ。
ほう、それはまたどうしてでございましょう。
親族会議ってのはじい様に連なる全ての一族老頭が集まる日だ。今年は6年ぶりにバトラも来るそうじゃねえか。そんな感じでさ、何十年かぶりに今までずっと姿を現さなかった親族。
ほほう、そんな親族がおりますでしょうか。
ベアトリーチェ様だよ。素性は誰も知らない。あるいは大昔のじい様の愛人なのか。その子孫がひょっこりと現れて授けた黄金を返せなんて言い出すかもしれないぜ。
クラウス様たちは親方様の遺産問題で今年も議論されるでしょうから。こうも魔女の黄金の話で盛り上がっては、黄金を与えた魔女本人がそろそろおいでになってもおかしくありませんね。
熊沢さんはさ、辞めたり勤めたりと忙しいけど、源氏さん並みに昔からここに出入りしてるわけでしょ。ベアトリーチェのこともっと知ってるんじゃないの？
さて思い出そうにもこの老いぼれ、今朝の朝食すらも思い出せませんので。
熊沢さんはいつもそういう
Okay,
言い
everyone,
方
what
で
did you
逃
have
げる
for
けど、
breakfast this morning? Do you
何か知って
remember?
そうなんだよな。知ってて物
I
陰で
know I
笑ってる
did
み
not
た
have
いな
breakfast this
陰湿
morning.
な雰囲気が時々するぜ。
これは手厳しい。
See, usually I have something. We do overnight oats a lot, like a banana blueberry oats a lot. But yeah, I would have had to be doing it at like 1 a.m. last night, and I was like, nah, I'm just gonna sleep instead.
隠し事など何もしておりません。
Yeah, I had breakfast every other day this week. Except maybe Sunday. I think Sunday I slept in.
私から申し上げられることは、ベアトリーチェ様は黄金の魔女であられて、この島の夜を支配されているもう一人の主人であられるということだけで。
じい様の受け売りかよ。給料もらってるとはいえ、じい様の妄言に付き合うのも大変だな。
ただこれだけは申し上げられま。
何？
六軒島は太古の昔、小豆島と呼ばれて恐れられてきました。小豆は悪時期がなまったものと言われ、本当は悪時期島と呼ばれていたのだと漁民たちの間では伝えられておりました。
前にも聞いたよ。この辺は暗礁が多くて海難事故が多かったから領民たちが恐れてむやみに近づかなかったって話だろ。
悪時期島には悪霊が住み着いていて、太古の昔から人々の魂を喰らい続けてきました。この島に関わり命を奪われた人間はあまりにも多いのです。
それを旅の修験者だかなんだかが例の社を作って鎮魂したんで収まったってんじゃなかったっけ。うさんくせえ話だぜ。
Well, those souls are now free to
そ
torment
の
everyone
鎮
again.
魂の社はこの夏、暗き闇を引き裂く紫色の不気味な雷で打ち砕かれたと。
Okay, so Beatrice, after gaining her power, destroyed the entire shrine.
熊沢さんその話好きだな。確かに鎮魂の社が落雷でなくなっちまうなんて不気味だが、まあもともとオンボロだったしな。ちょっと高い波にでもさらわれたんじゃねえのかな。
眠りから目覚めた悪時期島の悪霊がベアトリーチェ様を呼び寄せたのです。もしベアトリーチェ様が親族会議に訪れられるようなことがあったなら。
あったなら
Kumasawa kept silent for a moment there. Jessica, who wanted her to keep going, found that silence very eerie. Once Kumasawa was satisfied that she'd spooked Jessica just the right amount, she grinned broadly.
はてさて、どんなことになるやら。
へえ、そいつは素敵じゃないかよ。
でしょ。たまには優雅な時間を得て、あなたの心を豊かにするのも。
Okay, so this must be... We must have gone back in time. Because if Rudolph is talking to Kyrie on the phone, and it sounds like he's in his office, this has to at least be like several days before.
心と財布は豊かじゃなきゃいけねえ。わかったよ。その日は開けておくことにする。予約を頼むぜ。
わかったわ。絶対よ。
ああ、よろしく頼む。愛してるぜ、キリエ。
After kissing the receiver, Rudolph hung up. In front of his seat, there were many executives with their sleeves rolled up, eagerly awaiting the end of that phone call.
待たせたぜ。アメリカから連絡は来たか。
はい。凱旋にデイル渡辺弁護士からです。おつなぎします。
結局のところ、感触はどうなんだ。
それが一つ芳しくないようでして、先方は裁判をも辞さないつもりのようです。
やっぱりごまかしきれねえかな。繋いでくれ。
わかりました。すぐに。
Executive ordered the secretarial office to connect him to the external line. Immediately, the telephone in front of Rudolph started ringing.
もしもし。ハローハロー。お待たせしました。後宮です。どうもどうも。いかがですか、そちらは。
Hello, President 後宮。挨拶は抜きで本題に入りましょう。いいニュースと悪いニュースがありますが、どちら
Oh, please let us pick. If you had to pick, do you like hearing the good news first or the bad news first?
悪いニュースが先がいいな。
Rudolph likes the bad news first.
デザートがないと頑張れないたちなんだ。
わかりました。悪いニュースは先方が東方を告発する準備に入ったということです。つい先日類似した裁判で原告が圧勝する判決が出されました。被告側も東方が主張するのとほぼ同じ内容で論戦していたのですが、全てにおいて却下されました。
So, some kind of American lawsuit.
残念ながらこのまま法廷に臨めば東方の主張はことごとく却下される可能性が
例の裁判全滅だったか。うちより有利な条件だったと思ってたんだが、そりゃ辛いな。で、いいニュースは？
先方の幹部と接触できました。先方に当方の立ち位置を説明し、先方のブランドイメージを侵害する意図がないことを説明し、理解を得ることができました。先方は近日中に条件提示を行い、それらの履行が行われるから
they're trying to settle out of
と約束しました。取締役会のナンバー2による発言です。
感触は
正直非常に厳しいものになると予想されます。当方の想定では避けられないものとして、社名変更、ブランド交渉の余地のあるものとして若い金額、大手新聞への謝罪広告掲載、それらの履行期間と見ています。
うちに潰れろと一言言やいいのに、周りくどい奴らだぜ。
先方は近年2代目社長に交代したばかりで、まだ足固めが終わっていません。当方が徹底抗戦した場合、現社長に失点を与えたい勢力が何らかの利的工作をしかねないと懸念しています。そのため先方トップも本件を速やかに解決したいという思惑があるようです。そのため迅速な和解のために多少の条件緩和を引き出せる余地も残っているかもしれません。
いずれにせよ、とんでもねえ金が必要になるか。
その覚悟は必要です。そしてそれでも懲罰的賠償金よりははるかに安いかと。
ありがとう先生。また進展があったら連絡してください。先生は高級鳥だからヨタ話もできねえ。サンキューサンキュー。グッバイ。
Rudolph hung up the phone, seeing that the executive sitting in the reception seat could guess what had been said.
聞こえたか野郎ども。まあそうじるとだ。金さえ積みや堪忍してやるぜってわけだ。あとは金の高だけを争点にすりゃいい。
しかし社長、渡辺氏の示した和解金の想定額はあまりにも膨大です。それだけの余裕はありません。
こんなことになるって分かってたら高くかなんて始めんじゃなかったぜ。
3年しのげれば資金的危機は脱出できる計算でした。まさかここで刺されるなんて本当についてない。
ホップステップジャンプのステップでこけちまったんだもんな。泣けるぜ。
メインバンクから金を引っ張るしかありません。
銀行はまずいな。連中は勝ち馬にしか金を出さん。景気は上向いてるが銀行に弱みは見せられねえ。
社長、妨害に資金はありますか？我々の把握していない資金です。
よせやい。俺がそういう男に見えるかよ。俺の財布の中身は全てお前らにさらしてるぜ。そこにある帳簿が我が社の全てだ。
なら金策が必要です。数百万ドル単位を引っ張れるスポンサーが大至急必要です。
社長の交友関係で何とかなりませんでしょうか。社長
ああ、落ち着けてめえら。金策は俺が何とかする。お前らはガタガタせずに業務を維持しろ。金さえ積めば向こうは許すと言ってるんだ。すでに俺たちはアジアに太いパイプを持ってる。いろいろ響くだろうが取引は維持できる。要は金さえ積めりゃ全て解決できる問題なんだ。見てろ、俺が全て解決する。お前らを路頭に迷わせなんかしねえぞ。大船に乗った気でいろい。無事に解決したらお前ら全員をシャンパンタワーでねぎらってやるぜ。約束する。だから黙って俺についてこい。いいな。
Okay, so now we know why he needs the money from Spider Grandpa. The airplane suddenly shook, probably because of turbulence. The shaking roused Rudolph from his sleep. He'd woken up early that morning and ended up drifting off to sleep while resting in the seat.
大丈夫？まだだいぶ眠いんじゃないの？このところだいぶ仕事が忙しかったようだし。
仕事が忙しいなんて大いに結構じゃねえか。俺が暇になっちまったら俺たち明日から路頭に迷うぜ。
そうね。バトラ君も帰ってきたんだから2人で物乞いすればいいって問題じゃないわよ。
そうだな。6年ぶりに家族が揃ったんだからな。家族水入らずで過ごせるよう課長が頑張らねえとな。
He looked outside the window. He saw that the airplane was already starting to drop in altitude considerably. The fishing boats which only looked like black grains until a short while ago had become clearly visible.
親父に土下座してげんこつ一発で1000万借りられるなら1ダースくらいもらっときてえところなんだがな。さもなきゃとっととお隠れになってくれりゃいいんだが散々すねをかじって今度は遺産目当てか。俺は地獄行きだな。そりゃこんな俺に親父も会いたくはないだろうよ。
まさか今年も親族会議にお出にならないつもりですか
な。Nanja looked at Kinzo's face, sighing. Kinzo's eyes remained rooted on those strange magic books.
ハゲタカどもの議論に加わるつもりは、好きに我が骨のしゃぶり方でも議論するがよかろう。実にくだらぬ。やれやれ、困ったものですな。
Nanja shook his head slightly. To him, children and grandchildren were to be adored. He believed that their growth was the only enjoyment for old men. He found Kinzo's words to be a very sad thing.
この部屋を出るべき時が来れば、私は姿を現す。あれが姿を未だ現さぬようにな。
Kinzo raised his face, and in the direction of his gaze was the portrait of the witch, respectfully displayed on the wall. Oh? Inside Kinzo's head, there was no conception of today being the day of the family conference, the day when all his dear family would gather together. It was only the face of the witch in the oil painting, who never smiled outside her portrait. Yes, so, okay. So the locked room puzzle for Kinzo was this. Kinzo was in his room. The last, and let me pull up, this is probably better viewed here. Kinzo is in his room. His room has two keys. One, Kinzo has, because it's his room. The other, Genji has. Genji had lent the key to Natsuhi. Natsuhi had gone to try to convince him to come down for breakfast, dinner, whatever meal it was. Of course, he never comes out. As Natsuhi is leaving, Eva comes along and is like, oh, you know, Grandpa doesn't want to listen to you, ha ha ha. And she sticks a crumpled up receipt, so small that you wouldn't be able to see it, inside the frame of the door as it's closing it. So it's stuck there. Right? Then, when they later go to see, to get Grandpa again, he's not there. However, this time they come as a group, right? And Eva notices that her piece of paper was still there and then flutters to the floor, meaning it has not been tampered with. But Kinzo was not there at that point. So the assertion at that point was that Natsuhi had previously killed Kinzo and either thrown him out the window and then gone around outside and then disposed of his body somewhat, or had already killed him before this and removed his body and was pretending to go visit him. Battler's assertion was that Kinzo could have been hiding under the bed or somewhere because you didn't really search the room, and then after you went in, he escaped outside. To counter, Beatrice's magic is something that can go through walls. She could teleport inside, teleport him out. So those are the sides of it. Everybody knew that when Kinzo talked about Beatrice, unnecessarily cutting in would instigate his wrath.
私は今日
それは何ですかな？
儀式というよりは博打に近い。なぜならリスクを負わぬ魔法に奇跡は宿らぬからだ。
Nanjo had already heard this countless times. You could call it Kinzo's favorite phrase. Since Kinzo believed in magic and miracles arising through betting his own fate, with a certain kind of risky probability in beating the odds.
かつて黄金のギャンブラーと言われた金蔵さんがいつお迎えが来てもおかしくないそのご老体で一体どんな博打に挑みますやら。これは見ものですな。
なるほど。研究を尽くした秘術の儀式も魔法にたけぬお前にかかれば博打呼ばわりか。まあいい。奇跡を信じる私が勝てば、お前の目には水鏡にしか見えなかったであろう我が研究のすべてが、この日に結実したことをはっきりと理解できるだろう。お前が勝てば、見たままの通り、いつ迎えが来てもおかしくない年寄りの水鏡に終わるだけだ。
一体どんなギャンブルを始めるやら。あなたの友人としてその賭けに、いや儀式でしたか。その儀式にあなたが勝てるよう心からお祈りするだけで。
感謝する。
そういえば金蔵さん、今年の親族会議には懐かしい客がおられるそうですな。
何
Kinzo reacted in an unusual way to Nanjo's words and turned around.
ルドルフさんのところのバトラ君です。6年ぶりにおいでになるそうじゃありませんか。きっと立派になっていますよ。
なんだバトラ、6年ぶり程度の客人など懐かしいなどと呼びはせぬ。
When hearing Battler's name, he showed an ill-humored expression, as though he'd been let down, and turned his back to Nanjo again.
金蔵さんにとっての6年など、この部屋で研究に没頭すればあっという間のことでしょうからな。
本当に懐かしい客はあるいは訪れるかもしれん。すべてはルーレットの出目次第だ。すでにルーレットは回り始めている。ルージュかノワールか。今宵ルーレットがどんな奇跡を見せてくれるのか楽しませてもらおうではないか。配当は大きいぞ。そして負ける気はせぬ。ベアトリーチェよ、我が賭けを受けるがいい。
Just then, the telephone on the table rang. The piercing noise seemed to displease Kinzo, and he picked up the receiver in order to preserve the silence as much as he could.
何事か、私は忙しい。
現時でございます。親族の皆様方が到着。
だからどうしたというのだ。適当に茶でも出せばよい。
かしこまりました。そのようにいたします。
Kinzo hung up the phone rudely. Watching him, Nanjo sighed yet again and shifted his attention outside the window. As he was now, Kinzo would probably show no interest in any kind of guest. Was there any guest he could make Kinzo agree to come out when he should? He had one person in mind, but that guest was one who could not possibly appear. After a glance at the witch of the portrait, and her candid expression which she could not place as happy or sad, Nanjo gazed up at the leaden sky. Get another opening video, or what's going on? Or is it officially opening this arc? Now then, are the pieces all lined up? Let us start a new game with the pieces all lined up once more.
何か問題は？
ねえよ。
Just because the song is called Answer doesn't mean this is an answer arc. The witch looked at him in challenge while elegantly smoking her pipe. And Battler? He just slovenly shrugged his shoulders as though she wasn't worth his time. He wouldn't look her in the eyes. That didn't mean he wasn't going to play. It signified his plain determination to never be taken in by the artifices of this being he faced. It was an expression of his powerful determination to fight.
まさか無策ではあるまいな。
Yeah, so at a very high level, how Umineko from this point on is portrayed is each of these arcs, each of the chapters, is one game between the two of them. Just in the first one, Battler doesn't know he's playing. So it almost takes place at times from this high point of view where the, quote, like, mysteries and questions are the pieces on the board. So Beatrice will present a mystery, a murder, something, and Battler's looking for a response, and they're just using chess as a metaphor for that. And if he can't come up with a reasonable counter, then he loses that piece or whatever.
お前の出方がわからねえ以上、策も何もねえぜ。好きに先手を取ればいいじゃねえか。
もちろんそうさせていただくぞ。お前の守りをいかに崩すか、何手で詰めるか。
Fun trivia: the fastest checkmate you can do is 2 moves, but it requires essentially both parties to be in on it. I think 4 is the fastest white can do by itself, assuming black doesn't respond well.
わらわの腕の見せ所よ。
お前がどんな手で来ようが、俺はお前を信じない。その一点を俺が貫き通す限り、俺に負けはない。ってことはだ。このゲームはお前に勝てないようにできてるぜ。
そうかもしれぬ。しかしな、ゲームを何度繰り返すかはわらわが決めるぞ。そしてわらわが勝ち、そなたが負けを認めるまで何度でも繰り返されるぞ。つまりこれは災難よ。そなたがわらわに屈服するまで続く永遠の災難。そなたがわらわを、魔女の存在を認めるまで永遠に続く。
なら、俺もお前が根負けするまで何度でも無限に付き合ってやるぜ。
At the heart of this is a battle of patience. Battler is clearly at the disadvantage here. So, can he withstand an infinite number of games until he wins? Or will Beatrice will she get bored of it before he gives up?
意地の張り合いってやつでは負けた例がねえんだ。
どこぞの魔女にでも入れ知恵されたか？まあよい。
ごたくは聞き飽きたぜ。さあ、おっ始めやがれ。
さあ、始めようではないか。そなたの指し手はすでに知り尽くしておる。手の内を知られた守りなどたかが知れておる。同じ手でしのぎきれると思うでないぞ。
ベアトリーチェ、一つだけ最初に言っておくことがある。
なんだ。
お前が何をのたまおうと自由だ。だが俺が信じるかどうかは常に俺が自分で決める。貴様の魔法がどれほどのものだったとしても俺の魂は屈しない。これは俺への拷問だと？違うね。
ならば何だというのか。
これはお前への拷問なのさ。お前がいつ俺に屈し諦めるか、それまで繰り返される拷問なのさ。
面白いかな、その例えやよし。互いを苛み合う拷問とは実に面白い。さーて始めようではないか。後ろ宮バトラー。
Samus is out here reminding everyone to lose the game today. (1986), that is the date. Every year, the relatives who visit Rokkenjima let a sigh of admiration at the rose garden which first greets them. They stood there talking with each other about the rose's beauty and the state of their blooming this year. There was a single unhealthy rose among them, and Maria became overwhelmed with dejection at its state. But George used his quick wits, saying that she should look after it if she felt that sorry for it. He marked it with a candy wrapper and immediately restored Maria's good mood. And once Battler, with whom she'd been getting along very well all morning, raised the subject of Halloween that Maria loved so much. Excuse me. She began playing around energetically again. To Maria, those marshmallow jack-o'-lantern candies that her mother had bought for her were probably a treasure greater than any other. It seemed that several of them had been bought for her, and she demanded trick-or-treat from every person she met, giving them candy instead of the other way around.
マリアはどうしてこんなにハロウィンが好きなんだろうな。日本人には一つ馴染みにくいイベントだと思ってたんだが。
仮装行列で練り歩く子供のお祭りだからじゃねえのか。普段と違う格好をしてはしゃぎ合うってのは楽しいぜ。
多分僕はもう少しディープな理由によるものだと思うな。何しろ魔女のマリアちゃんだからね。
そういや、飛行場でもマリアは仮装するなら魔女になりたいって言って、マリアって魔女が好きなんだ。
ええ、大好きよ。困ったくらいに。
まあまあ、あのくらいの年頃はファンタジックな存在に憧れるもんですから。
せめてテレビアニメのヒロインに憧れるくらいなら可愛いんだけど。
Judging by Rose's reactions, it seemed that, as a mother, she did not find her daughter's love for witches pleasant. Seemingly all the cousins other than Battler were able to understand this, and they shrugged their shoulders, smiling awkwardly.
魔女好きだとハロウィンも好きになるって論法なのか？わかんなきゃ本人に聞けばいいか。おい、マリア、ハロウィンと魔女って何か関係あるのか？
As Battler asked that, George and Jessica let out a small noise. It seemed they were too late. It almost looked as though Marie had been waiting for that question. After looking happy for an instant, her expression turned a little mean, as if to say, "You don't know anything, do you?" It was the expression of an enthusiast who had been enthralled by the ignorant statement of an outsider with a wrong impression.
ケルト人は1年間を通じてその勢いを変える太陽は1年を通して生まれ、育ち、老いて死んで、そして再び蘇ると考えていたの。
納得だな。春のか弱いポカポカした太陽がどんどん成長して暑いくらいになり、次第に痩せ衰えていく様をなるほど太陽の一生と考えるのもうなずけるぜ。
だから彼らは10月の最後に太陽は死に、死の国で体を休めて冬至の日に再び蘇ると考えたの。それで太陽が1年の生涯を終えて死ぬその日を大晦日サビンと呼んでお祝いしたの。
再び日照時間が長くなりだす冬至の日を太陽の復活の日とする考え方はとても面白いよね。古代の人々がいかに太陽を神聖視していたかがわかるエピソードだよ。
で、それが魔女とどう関係があるんだ？
It seemed that my casual urging forward had slightly infuriated Maria. She glared at me with eyes that told me to let her explain without interrupting. Maria looked like she was having fun telling me, so I decided not to interrupt.
10月と11月の狭間は生と死が最も近くなる。 ケルト人たちはこの時期に聖者の世界と死者やこの世ならざる者の世界が最も近づき、異界の住人たちがたくさん訪れると信じてたの。日本でいうお盆みたいなものだよ。
At the time, the people believed that the souls returning to the physical world would go into people's houses or possess people to do bad things. But in order to avoid harm from them, the people invented protective rituals. One of those was to imitate creepy monsters and scare the souls instead, which was apparently a way to avoid being possessed.
その部分がお祭りになっていって仮装行列になってったんだな。マリアは本当に物知りだぜ。
ほんまやな。わしもハロウィンに備えな言われがあるなんて知らんかったわ。
しかしそれのどこにお菓子をくれなきゃいたずらしちゃうぞってのが出てくるんだ。
Her knowledge was so extensive that the adults had started listening in too at some point. Maria, who was normally always treated like the youngest, puffed out her chest in pride. Rosa tried to say this was just a kid's story and that she wanted to quickly break up the circle and set the luggage down in the guest house, but nobody else agreed and she let out a heavy sigh.
おう、トリックオアトリートは単なるお遊び。本来のケルト人たちの儀式とは何の関係もない。それは後にキリスト教の習慣が混合してできたものなの。でもマリアは本来のハロウィンの姿とはそうある。
According to Maria, the souls of the dead weren't the only ones who visited from the world of the non-human. There were also spirits that had an intimate connection to how people lived. It was because humans received the favors of those spirits that they were able to earn a wonderful blessing, a year's worth of good crops.
つまりハロウィンってのは収穫祭の意味も少しはあったわけか。
なるほどな。言われてみりゃ10月ってのは季節的にもいろいろ節目って気がするぜ。日本の4月のちょうど反対側だもんな。なるほど。キリはいいかもしれねえな。
そしてね、魔女たちはね、その時期に魔女集会サバトを開いたの。魔女たちは豊かな恵みをもたらしてくれた精霊たちに感謝しねぎらったの。
ハロウィンの仮装は向こうから来る客人たちの模倣。つまり彼らにお菓子を施すのは一年の収穫への感謝の気持ちがあってもいいわけだね。
うん、ジョージお兄ちゃんの言う通り。
つまりハロウィンはこの世とあの世の交流のある時期ってわけなんだな。それでつまり魔女たちにとってはそういう世界の客人たちと交流できる大切な、そう言いたいわけか。
おう、バトラの言う通り。だからね魔女たちや悪魔たちの力が最も活発で盛んになるのが10月なの。きっとベアトリーチェも来てくれる。そしてね、一緒にマシュマロお菓子食べてマリアも黄金鏡に連れてってもらうの。一緒に魔法のお歌を歌って魔法の呪文を習って魔法陣の書き方を習うの。そしてね、ルーンの秘密を習って早くマリアを立派な魔女にしてもらうの。
Sure, this makes your mother very happy.
それは素敵ね。子供は夢があるのが一番よ。ところでローザ、マリアちゃんは今年でいくつになったんだったかしら。
マリア、もうそのお話は終わりにしなさい。
気にしないでローザさん。女の子なら誰だって一度は思い描く夢じゃない。
ありがとうございます。でももうマリアはそういう年を卒業しています。こら、やめなさいと言ってるでしょ。
Rosa scolded Maria, trying to shut her up before her cheery discussion about black magic earned her the Snickers with her relatives. They should give her Snickers. It's part of trick or treat, right?
そいつはなんだかスケールのでかい話だな。ところでベアトリーチェって誰だっけ？なんだっけ？聞いた名前だな。
Battler had been gone for 6 years and had completely forgotten about the legend of the Rokinjima witch. However, when he said that he didn't know Beatrice's name, Maria's mood, which had been so bright until just now, became sour in an instant. When he saw that, Battler immediately remembered it was the name of the witch of this island, that the damage had been done. Until Maria's mood improved, many mysterious and fabulous episodes regarding the Golden Witch were drilled into his brain.
もうよしなさい、マリア。ありがとうね、バトラ君。お話に付き合ってくれて。カノン君、お仕事があるんでしょ？もう行ってちょうだい。ゴーダさん、みんなとりあえず荷物を置きたがってると思うの。悪いんだけど、みんなをゲストハウスへ案内してくれるかしら。
かしこまりました。それでは皆様、ゲストハウスへご案内いたします。
They're cutting in and out. So in the first arc, Goda's leading us to the mansion from the dock, and we bump into Canon along the way, who is shoveling dirt or something. He's got like a wheelbarrow with something, and it falls over, and Goda's like chastising him about it.
それでは失礼いたします。
Led by Goda, the relatives headed off in the direction of the guest house. But that wasn't shown in this one. We jumped from... They were waiting at the airport to... They were already on the plane to they were at the Rose Garden. Their minds in setting down their luggage and taking a quick rest, they didn't notice that Rose and Maria had stayed in the same spot. After watching them leave towards the guest house, Rose's features changed suddenly. She let go of the hand that had been gripping Maria's arm the whole time. There was a bright red mark there, making it clear how much excessive force she'd been gripping Maria's slender arm with. Well, we went through it again, Samus says. That hand then smacked Maria over the head and pulled her left ear up into the air, pinching it sharply.
魔女の話はするなといつも言ってるでしょうが、それはママとの約束だといつも言っているでしょ。ママ痛い、ママ痛い、痛い痛い痛い。ハロウィンうるさいのよあんたは。魔女のお祭り？ケルト人が何よ、黒魔術が何よ、バカじゃないの。あんた9歳よ9歳。電車であんなに騒ぐから。わざわざ電車降りてまでその蛍光塗料みたいな気持ち悪いお化けマシュマロを買ってやったのよ。遅刻してまであんたに買ってやったのよ。あんたどこまで私の顔を潰せば気が済むのよ。
As Rosa cursed, she twisted Maria's ear up, making it seem like it was going to snap off. An expression of anguish spread across Maria's face, and she stood on her tiptoes as though her life depended on it, trying to soften the pain on the ear that was being pulled. Rosa suddenly stole the candy that Maria had been holding in her hand. She then threw it on the ground and stomped on it over and over. To Maria, it was supposed to be proof of the memory of that span of time, however brief, when she'd enjoyed doing shopping with her mother. But it was being trampled on by that very same mother. It was as though a brand was being pushed against Maria's eyes, leaving a mark that could not be erased.
こんな気持ち悪いお菓子が何よ。気持ち悪い気持ち悪い。あんたがそんなんだから、あんたがそうなんだから。気持ち悪い気持ち悪い気持ち悪い。
She struck Maria's head over and over with her palm as she spoke. She didn't hit Maria's face because the red swelling would stand out. Maria closed her eyes tightly, patiently bearing her mother's violence. No, that wasn't quite it. Kept bearing it, muttering that over and over.
その魔女ってのをやめろっつってんのよ。この
Rosa's shoulders shook as she breathed, tired from hitting. Marie grasped her hands together, withstanding it, hoping her mother would come back quickly.
Mama! 早く帰ってきて。マリアを助けてよ、ママ。悪い魔女をやっつけてよ。
いつまでもそこでそうしていなさい。そしてそこで魔女でもハロウィンでもいつまでもブツブツ一人で言ってればいいのよ。
After throwing those words at Maria, Rosa went off towards the guest house, leaving Maria behind. Maria, unable even to remember that it was alright to cry, kept staring down at the trampled, unrecognizable jack-o'-lantern candy.
Rosa, どこ行ってたの？
ごめんなさい。バラが素敵だったもので、ついつい。
ローザ、早く荷物を置いてこいよ。兄貴んとこへ挨拶に行こうぜ。
ん？マリアちゃんはどうしたんや？まだ花壇におるんかいな。
ええ、気に入ったバラがあるみたいで、世話をするって言って聞かなくて、しばらくは好きにさせることにしました。
女の子には女の子の世界があったことを、私たちはたまに忘れるわ。時には尊重してあげないとね。
そうね。お気遣いをありがとう、キリエ姉さん。ゴーダさん、私たちの部屋はどこ？
ご案内いたします。こちらでございます。お荷物をお持ちいたしましょう。
結構よ。自分で持てます。
Rosa went into the room that Goda had guided her to. Closing the door somewhat violently, she threw her luggage on top of the bed. Her luggage was invisible. She got down on her knees in front of the bed and buried her face in it. For a while, Rosa made as if to shred the sheets with her fingernails, sobbing continually.
Maria 様、大丈夫ですか?
Cannon, who'd been hiding behind a thicket, appeared after watching Rosa leave.
平気だよ。
Maria laughed unpleasantly, but to Cannon, who had seen the whole thing, it looked like she was enduring as best as she could.
最低のやつだ。あれで母親なんて。
仕方ないよ。その程度の器には、その程度のが入り込む。マリアは全然平気だよ。
Cannon got down on his knees and picked up the trampled candy. It was tragic just looking at it. He thought about dusting it off and returning it to her, but really couldn't do so with it in that condition. Jeez. As he was at a loss at what to do, his eyes met with Maria. No, they didn't meet. Maria was looking at the candy that Cannon had picked up. Right now, Maria's heart was surely the same as that trampled candy which had been crushed into a pulp. Cannon realized this, but he didn't know what he should do.
そうだ。さっき僕がもらったのと交換。
Cannon remembered that an identical candy which he had received from Maria was in his pocket. Maria stuck out her hand. Cannon thought she was trying to accept it, so he held out the candy, but Maria didn't try to grasp it. And Cannon realized she was asking him to give it back. No matter how tragic it was, the trampled candy was Maria's. Her mother had bought it for her. No matter how tragic, it had to be this candy. If only it can be made pretty again by dusting it off. Cannon hung his head.
誇りを払う程度しかできない。ごめん。
Cannon held out the miserable candy she wanted. Maria took it and spoke.
ありがとう。人間には誇りしか払えないけど、魔女には元通りに直すことができるよ。ベアトリーチェなら簡単にね。
マリア様はベアトリーチェ様のことをご存知なのですか?
There couldn't be anyone related to the Ushiromiya family who didn't know Beatrice's name, with Battler as an exception. But just now, Maria had told Battler about her proudly. He'd spoken almost as though she'd been meeting with Beatrice regularly. The inside of the fist Cannon made with his left hand hurt sharply. In the past, a witch called Beatrice had appeared and had tempted him and Shannon. He always tried to make himself think it had been a bad dream. However, Shannon insisted it had definitely been a real witch. Okay, so it's been a long enough time that he was saying, in the past. And then this summer, the shrine to the local Shinto god had been hit by lightning and had disappeared without a trace in the span of a single night. He had known that Shannon had broken the mirror, and he remembered too, but upon the witch's departure, she had left him with the words that she would eventually be revived. So probably the timeline is springtime, they meet Beatrice. In early summer, Shannon breaks the mirror and ends up together with George. Let's say that was the start of July, at like the earliest point of summer. So July, August, September, and it's now the start of October. So that means Shannon and George have been together 4 months, roughly. And now this girl, who had no end of faith in Beatrice, spoke as though she had met her. Ken couldn't surpass a sense of something ominous welling up in his heart. For a while, Maria remained silent, as though she could see into Cannon's heart, as though she were waiting for his memory of Beatrice to come back to him. Then she spoke matter-of-factly.
マリアはね、ベアトリーチェとお友達なの。今日だって会って一緒に遊ぶよ。
遊び
遊ぶよ。一緒にね、魔法のお勉強をするの。
The face of the witch, Ken had tried to pretend it was a bad dream, began to slowly creep into the back of his mind.
"お父様は研究で大変ご多忙と仰せです。残念ながらこちらへはおいでになれないとのことです。
やれやれ、こちとら秋の大忙しの中、日程をつけてはるばる六軒島まで来てるんだぜ。親父も少しは愛想をよくしてもらいたいもんだぜ。
本当よね。南條先生、本当に研究や機嫌の問題なの？ベッドから起き上がれないくらいに容体が悪いって言うんじゃ。
さて、どうでしょうかな。私の口からは何とも。
Ninja glanced at Natsuhi, as though he wasn't qualified to disregard Natsuhi when he spoke on this
お父
topic.
様はますますにご健康でいらっしゃいます。寝たきりなどと失礼極まりない。
でも余命3ヶ月なんでしょ？普通に考えれば痩せ衰えてベッドからも起きられないはずよ。でしょ、南條先生？
波の患者ならそうでしょうがな。金蔵さんは並外れた気力をお持ちです。あの気迫にお迎えも恐れて近寄れないのかもしれませんな。
それほどまでにお元気なら少なくとも安心ね。
そこまで元気ならせめて挨拶くらいはさせてほしいもんなんだがな。親族会議ってのは親父の顔を見に来たって意味なんだぜ。これじゃあ何のために来たのかわからねえぜ。
そう言うな。いればいたで心が休まらないといつもぼやくのだろうが、兄弟一同水入らずで今年も全員欠けることなく集まれたことを喜ぼうじゃないかね。
昨年の親族会議でも会えなかったのよ。血を分けた子供たちが2年ぶりに挨拶したいというのがどうして理解してもらえないのかしら。
挨拶の言葉があるのでしたら私どもがお伝えします。それともエヴァさん、何かお父様にお会いして挨拶以上のお話でもあられるのですか？
いやね、何の話よも
う。予算かエヴァ。夏井さん、堪忍な。エヴァも娘としてお父さんの病状が不安なだけなんや。ちょいと気持ちを汲み取ってな。
その通りだ。エヴァは親父殿が余命を宣告されてから急に親孝行をするようになったじゃないか。なるほど。
その姿をぜひ見てもらいたいという気持ちもわからなくない。
何が言いたいのよ。
よせよ姉貴、晩飯までには機嫌を直してくれるよう祈ろうじゃねえか。それに俺たちは到着したばかり。まずは軽く挨拶に訪れただけだぜ。親族会議は親父抜きだってできる。いや、兄弟で意見を統一してからじゃなきゃ話せねえことだっていろいろあるはずだぜ。な、秀吉兄さん。
そうや、ルドルフ君の言う通りや。わしらが全員顔を揃えるのは年に一度しかない。貴重な時間を大事にし、忌憚ない話し合いをせんといかん。
Even though the tea hadn't come yet, they were very strong-minded.
でも、その前に本家の素晴らしい調度品に囲まれた客間で、のんびりと紅茶を楽しむゆとりがあってもいいんじゃないかしら。
Kyrie's words seemed to hold some slight admonishment towards all the people gathered in that place. They all understood as they cleared their throats and straightened their neckties. The atmosphere in the room returned to normal for a moment.
失礼します。お茶をお持ちいたしました。
よー、シャノンちゃん。ますますべっぴんさんになったな。
Shannon entered the parlor, pushing the serving cart. Everyone decided to slowly enjoy some black tea for the time being. A wonderful aroma began to spread throughout the parlor. Looking at the scene, it would have been impossible to guess the strained atmosphere which had been there right before Shannon had entered. Of course, Shannon, who was setting up the tea, probably didn't even notice. Kyrie made a gesture that seemed to laugh at everyone's adult appearance. Rudolph didn't like when Kyrie took the initiative and spoke at the family conference. It was his worthless male pride. He probably didn't want to look like a weak man taking his wife's advice. She understood that and was doing her best to refrain from saying anything unnecessary. So she separated herself from the circle of siblings, which was only good-natured in appearance, and slowly enjoyed her tea near the window.
ローザさん、兄弟で水入らずなのでは？ご冗談を。ごめんなさい。気を悪くしないで。うちの夫に呆れてるだけだから。
It seemed that Rosa hadn't been able to keep up the charade of amicability. They had come here to fight bloodily and dirtily, each trying to steal the inheritance from the others. She probably didn't want to pretend to be fellow conspirators at this stage. Or maybe she was still much too inexperienced for that.
だいぶ風が出てきているようですね。枝葉があんなに揺れて。もう台風が近くまで来ているのでしょうね。今夜あたりからはだいぶ降るのかしら。マリアちゃん、この1年で随分立派になりましたね。そう見えます。未だに自分のお洋服を畳むことすらできないんですよ。ええ、こんなにも愛情たっぷりなお母さんと一緒なんですもの。
Can we roll back the tape to this affectionate mother? Oh, we don't have that tape? Okay, great.
心の豊かな子に成長しますよ。
We gotta go through this 6 more times, Samus. Rosa was silent. Maybe she was unsure as to how Kyrie meant that.
私なんて母親失格ですよ。子に生まれる親は選べない。あの子がかわいそう。お互い様じゃないですか。親だって生まれる子は選べない。
Rosa bit her lower lip.
どちらが悪いとかじゃなくて、一緒に生きていくんだという気持ちで、ゆっくり成長を見守ってあげればいいじゃないですか。ローザさんは毎日をマリアちゃんと過ごしてるから、小さな変化に気づかないかもしれないけれど、1年ぶりに再会した私たちには、その大きな成長ぶりがよくわかり
The
ます
mod
よ。
also takes every time they mention a piece of furniture, like a chair, bed, or couch, and calls it a cannon. For example, Rosa threw her suitcase on top of Cannon. Hello, Beardy. How's it going?
もし本気で言ってくれてるなら。それでは失礼いたします。ご用がありましたらいつでもお呼びつけください。
Shannon bowed politely and left the room. After Hideyoshi and Rudolph watched her go with turned heads. The atmosphere in the room began to revert back to what it had been right before Shannon had visited.
お父様がいらっしゃられないなら、それはそれでできる話もあるというものよ。
Oh gosh. Flat tire, fuel pump trouble, and you're sick. Okay. What? So, stuff that's happened. So we've officially kicked off the family meeting again, so we're all back on the island. We know that, and let's pull up the characters. Rudolph's company is in a lawsuit where it's likely that they would lose if it went to court, so they're trying to settle outside of court. To settle that, they need a boatload of money, millions of dollars, in 1986. Even if that, and it's an American company, so I'm assuming that when they talk millions of dollars, that's millions of American dollars, not millions of yen. Rose is still a piece of trash. And we have a little bit of timeline in terms of some of the flashbacks and stuff that's happened. So, the family event takes place in early October. It's currently October 4th. I believe if I come out here, it'll tell us... Yeah, it's Saturday, October 4th, 1986. And we know that when Shannon breaks the mirror and opens up the magic that Beatrice was missing, that was in the summer. So with that time frame, if summer is, say, July, August, then the time, and that Beatrice granted Shannon and George their relationship after Shannon did that, as was their agreement. At most, Shannon and George have been together for 3 or 4 months. We also know that they had talked before this, that George said he was having a ring made for Shannon and was hoping it would be ready for this conference, at which point he would propose to her if it was ready. And when he proposed, he would tell, he would do what we know he does, where he gives her the ring and gives her a choice as to whether or not to accept or not. But he said if she accepts, he would tell everyone, including grandfather, immediately about their engagement and their relationship. I think that covers all the key plot points. And now we're just back at, everyone's here and not so nicely wanting to get the inheritance for themselves. But we haven't openly started that discussion. But I think Eva's just about to get us kicked off.
ああ、そうだね。俺たちははるばるここまで誇りの匂いがする紅茶を飲みに来たわけじゃねえぜ。
よかろう。一秒を争ってお前たちがしたいという話を聞こうじゃないか。
やれやれ、たくましい人たちね。
I mean, if it's witchy tea, then probably.
早速始めたわ。
私も加わらないといけないわ、あの人たち。私が主張しないと、4人兄弟であることをすぐは。
あなたも大変ね。ちょっと言葉を選ばなかったかしら。ごめんなさい。
うん、気にしてません。こちらこそごめんなさい。私たち互いに娘を持つ母親同士なんだから、もっと交流しなきゃいけないのに、いっつも会えば変な話ばかりで。
この屋敷の空気のせいよ。ここの空気を嗅ぐと、いっつも私たちはギスギスし合ってるもの。ローザさんとは親族会議じゃない席で一度ゆっくりお茶でも飲みたいわ。銀座に行きつけの素敵な喫茶店があるの。
No gifting subs to suspicious furniture. Also, why is there so many suspicious furnitures?
ぜひ今度招待させて。
ありがとう、キリエさん。
Please don't be immune to
その
sleep.
時はぜひ。
And there's no furniture command. Actually, hold on one sec. I can fix that one. Oh, I can do it the other way too. Okay, try now. There we go. Is that the mod that you wanted?
急に空が暗くなってきたわ。まるでこの部屋の人たちが天気を悪くしてるみたい。もうゴロゴロ鳴ってるわ。あら。ぽつりと来たかしら。
There really were small splashes of rain on the glass of the parlor window. It seemed that the weather had gotten worse faster than they had expected. Just then, a silent thunderbolt struck inside Rose's head, and she remembered that her beloved child was in the rose garden. Sounds good. We won't be around too much longer, probably another 15-ish minutes. Also, because we're just getting to the storm, some questions for people to be thinking about that we know happened from the first arc. Who cuts the telephone line? What happens to the people who stay up late at night? Rudolph says he knows he's going to die to Battler after dinner. What does he mean by that? How does he know? Those are probably the top 3 questions I have from this first night. And I guess, does Maria really meet Beatrice? Does Beatrice give her the letter? What does she learn from Beatrice at their meeting, assuming they meet? A normal girl would think about going to the house if the weather got bad, but Maria was different. She would sometimes become stubborn and wouldn't move no matter whether rain or even spears fell from the sky. That's right, I told the kid to just stay there doing that forever, didn't I? Quite possibly. Also, I think it's safe to say Maria has lived through child abuse, which probably has lasting trauma. Assuming that her mother has been like this for some time, she probably has lasting trauma. Hey Odin, hello. My guess is it's some combination of both. Samus's, that Maria has some kind of spectrum. She's on the spectrum in some way, which probably makes Rosa frustrated, and then Rosa takes out her frustrations on Maria, which gives her trauma, which just repeats it on and on. At this small exclamation, everyone turned to look at Rosa.
ごめんなさい。ちょっと表に行ってきます。すぐ戻ります。
なんだなんだ。どうしたってんだあいつ。
いいじゃない。すぐ戻るわよ。それより始めたら？私たちの本題。
そうね。ローザ抜きでも進められる話よ。話を戻しましょう。
Rosa dashed from the entrance hall into the rose garden. When she opened the door, the wind that hit her was too strong to be called a breeze, and told her that the typhoon was approaching faster than she had thought. Just as Kyrie had said, small droplets of rain were mixed in with the wind. There was also the low rumble of thunder. It could start raining any time. Rosa headed for the rose garden. She headed for the place where she had scolded Maria a short while ago. It was almost lunchtime. The children had been told that they could just come to the mansion at lunchtime, so they were probably in the guest house waiting to be called. Even if Maria didn't come, they would surely think that I had taken her to the mansion with me and wouldn't worry much. After all, she was with her mother, so there shouldn't have been anything to worry about. Except I was here and had thrown my daughter into the worsening weather outside all alone. It really was as I thought. She was standing stock still, exactly the same way she'd been in the place where I had scolded her. Held in her hand was the candy that I had bought, given her, and then stepped on and crushed. With that gripped in her hand, she'd been standing there as the strong wind whipped her hair about, tormenting her. So Maria... Can I go back? So Maria's not literally talking about, I waited here for you to come back. She's saying, I waited here for, like, this version of you to come back, not the scary witch version of yourself.
Mama は悪くないの。また悪い魔女に取り憑かれただけなの。だから平気。ママ大好き。愛してる。
She says two different versions of I love you, by the way. First one's like, I like you a lot, and the second one is, I love you. It's kind of the two different ways.
ごめんなさい。ごめんなさい。悪い魔女に負けた。ママを許して。
Rosa buried her face in Maria's small chest, crying and begging forgiveness. Those tears dripped down again as they had countless times before. If only the brilliant sun had been shining on the two of them, all of their cares would have evaporated, and it would have felt like they could begin anew. However, what surrounded the two of them was the worsening weather. Strong winds mixed in with the sound of thunder were saddening. Rosa noticed the sounds of Maria sniffling. If she stood exposed to the wind for too long, she would probably catch a cold.
もうすぐお昼よ。ママと一緒にお屋敷に行きましょう。
行かない。
どうして？
Rosa thought that Maria had already forgiven her, so she never imagined she would refuse. That expression on Maria's face didn't look like that of a child resisting her mother. So Rosa wasn't able to understand why Maria wanted to stand still in the rose garden, pointlessly, as the weather grew even worse. Maria answered that question.
ベアトリーチェがね、もうすぐ来るの。だから待ってるの。
マリア。
Rosa started to say something, faltered, and then fell silent. They'd just gone to great lengths to make up with each other. He chose her words carefully, trying to get Maria to come with her to the mansion without denying the witch outright.
ベアトリーチェが来るの？そう。なら、ここじゃなくて、お屋敷の中で待ちましょう。いつまでもこんな風の中にいたら、風邪をひいてしまうわ。
来る！ベアトリーチェは来る！そしたらね、ベアトリーチェにね、お菓子あげるの。トリックオアトリートするの。ジャックオーランタンのマシュマロお菓子あげて、ハッピーハロウィーンって言う。
Maria pulled out yet another sweet from her handbag, moaning, ooh. Rosa was bewildered, not knowing what to do as Maria started being difficult again. Just then, there was a sudden and massive roar of thunder. It was probably a sign that indicated this island had become closed off by the storm, detached from common sense and reality. Therefore, as of this moment, all common sense would no doubt be useless. The wind blew even stronger, and in the middle of the blizzard of scattered rose petals, a figure appeared, leaving Rosa momentarily unable to imagine that this was a scene from reality. No, probably it was. It had to be fantastical. Because the figure was shaped like... Unfortunately, that is where we're going to have to stop for today.